Okay, we are good to go. So we'll use the raise hand function for Coach Barnes again. And going.
I'm gonna play with my buzz.
Go ahead, PJ.
What's so funny? What's so funny?
So, Adia, what do you think about how Lauren is progressing? You know, she didn't have the normal, as you say, the normal non-conference season. She's a freshman. She hasn't played in a year. So what do you think's going on with her and how's she doing so far?
I think she's doing well. I think for after ACL, I think it takes some time. They always say a year, but I think it takes 2 years to get back to exactly where you were. We have to work a little bit more with her balance and just some little things like that, just because she's a freshman and learning so many new things. But I think her progression is great. I think she's got a chance to be really good, you know, for our team and our conference. She does things that you can't teach, like her timing defensively, her knack for the ball. She's super vocal from volleyball and active, so it really helps her as a basketball player. The things we have to work on is just, you know, guarding like quicker players, like when you're in boxing out, stuff like that, that when you're in high school, you don't have to do when you're 6'5". So, but here she has to do.
Sorry, Ryan, go ahead.
What do you just kind of make of the two teams that you're supposed to face on this road trip? I know Washington State specifically has been really a surprise team this season.
Well, it's a really tough trip going to Washington. Washington's also tough because they just throw a lot of defenses at you. So we have to prepare for a lot of different things. And that trip just seems to be hard. And then Pullman, ending at Pullman, it's really cold. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's always a really tough trip for everybody. I'd say Pullman and Colorado, Utah are the toughest. But I think everybody's surprised because Washington State's really good. And I think they're even a little bit underrated. I know they played, you know, the Oregons, but they haven't played, you know, like the UCLA's, the Stanfords, us yet. But that's gonna be a really hard game. They run a lot of different stuff. So they're super efficient on offense. It's a hard place to play. So definitely not an easy game at all. I mean, our goal is to go there and sweep, and there's a lot going on right now. So hopefully this weekend will happen. Yeah. Don't know yet. That's kind of why I was delayed a little bit. But we're hoping. There's just a lot of schools going on pause. So I'm hoping that the games happen this weekend.
Were you able to get a charter for this trip?
Yeah, we were. So, you know, and I think that some of the scary things is when games are being canceled, it's just a big investment. It's a lot of money. So you know, hopefully last second, nothing happens because I think, you know, the charters are paid prior. So, but yes, we do have a charter. So it's a world of difference for us.
And is going back to Seattle still a very interesting experience for you, or have you just done it enough times now where the newness of being there as a visiting coach is kind of worn off?
I think the newness is kind of worn off, but it still has a sentimental place for me. So much stuff happened in Seattle, and it was kind of like the start of a new beginning for me for my life. So going back there, it's always like a warm, fuzzy feeling. I have so many friends there. You know, Washington was my home for years, even before I coached at Washington. So, or Seattle was my home for many years before I coached at Washington. So it is kind of older, but it's still, I think the rivalry's still there, obviously, because Ari was there. It overlapped a little bit, you know, with Jody. So, sorry, phone's ringing. There's a lot going on this weekend. I think you'll see some changes coming up very soon. So that's why my phone keeps on ringing. But yeah, so I think that it's just that we go at it. Remember last year we were down by 19 there.
Troy, go ahead.
Wait, I can't
Troy,
hear.
you're on mute.
Yeah. Sorry, I had trouble with the mute button there. So you mentioned being down by 19 there to start the game last year. How do you avoid a slow start? Because that's kind of been an issue throughout this season, is getting off to a slow start.
Well, I think that was the only issue a couple times. I think that was addressed after that. Even Stanford, it wasn't slow. It got slower later. So I don't think that's an issue for us. I think, and initially it was, and we were awesome the third quarter, but then I think we kind of changed that at Colorado and Utah. And then Stanford, I don't think was slow. I think it was just bad after that. After the first couple minutes, then it all went downhill. But I don't think it's an issue for us. I think it's just we have to continue to get better, continue to work, and all those things.
Okay, go ahead.
Having had a couple of days to digest the last weekend. So what do you feel you've learned about your team, and how you guys are approaching things going forward?
Well, so that was a measuring stick for us. The Stanford game was just for us to see where we're at against number one in the country, and we have a lot to work on. We're not, we're good, but we have a lot to work on to be really good. And I think that was a test. We didn't play well at the game, but they forced us to play that way, and they played really well. So I wanted to see where we're at, but I'm proud of our showing character and bouncing back on the Sunday and playing well. So I think that being able to bounce back after getting our butts kicked says a lot about who we are and stuff. So I think that, still have a ways to go. I think you'll see us improve before the next game because we're working on some things, but had some things that were exploited, some things we weren't good at. It's really showed in the Stanford game.
Thank you.
Yep. So a lot to work on, but the good thing is we get to work. And the good thing is, we're playing and we're blessed for that. But yeah, it definitely has to get better if we want to beat number one.
Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah. So ASU, I guess, won't be making the trip to Washington this week because of COVID issues. How does that affect your team in terms of like Washington State now? They don't have a game on Friday before they play you. Do you think that helps them with scouting, or maybe the fact that they haven't played in a whole week would make them a little bit rusty going into that game?
Yeah, people are always thinking about that. I think good and bad. I think one thing, it's good because you can prepare for the opponent, so they get more time to prepare for us. But I think in a way, sometimes it's bad because you're not playing in games. But I think that there's gonna be more changes this weekend. So I think there's gonna be some different scenarios coming up very soon.
And for Washington State, they have the two, I don't know if I'm pronouncing their names right, but the Ledger Walker sisters.
Very good.
The younger one specifically has been really good this year. And I'm just curious because she played on the New Zealand national team. If you ever saw her with Tara or them.
Yeah, so it's funny. I went to the World Championships 2 years ago to see Tara, and that's when I first saw Ledger Walker. So definitely was interested in her back then. But I wasn't sure if she was going to for sure come to the States. And then knowing her sister played here, when I heard of her sister transferring, I kind of knew. So that was a normal fit for her to go to Washington State. But she's very good. She's like a coach's kid, super smart. Her and her sister have great chemistry, very tough. Did I think she would come to the Pac-12 and average 19.5 points a game? No, I did not. But watching her play, she doesn't force shots. She has a high basketball IQ. She's a very, very good player. She's going to be very good in this league.
And other than those two, I mean, what do you think Washington State has really done to replace Molina and Bobby Buck? Because those are two of their best players, and you would think losing them would hurt them, but they're even better this season.
Well, I think that they're really a lot smarter this year. I think with the Ledger Walker sisters are really high basketball IQs, so their offense just flows better. And I think that losing, Bobby Buckus or Molina, the replacement was Ledger Walker. Even though she's a freshman, I think she's kind of filled that void. But Bella, their post player has gotten better. I think just the pieces, Ula, they've all improved. So I really like their balance, and that's what makes them hard. So I'm curious to see, like, as they start to get into, the Stanfords and us and other matchups, I'm curious to see, because their style's so different, but they're extremely hard to guard. So I think they're gonna win a lot of games. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited for our test on the road. A team like them to be tested on the road is really big for us.
PJ, go ahead.
Every week you say that, I know that you're focused on yourselves and getting better, but you usually break it down to like a couple of things for the players to really focus on. What are your things this week that you're focusing on?
Well, the first thing is just my team has to be prepared for the Washington game for pressing. So different types of press, just so we're prepared for us in the game. We're like, oh, so you have to review that. Washington has a really good point guard. They're playing good basketball. Although it's not, the wins I think are just deceptive sometimes because they're in a lot of games. They're very hard to guard off pick and roll situations. So their freshman Sandler is good. So definitely have to play the pick and roll well. So working in those different situations. And then against Washington, they run a lot of chin action. So we've seen a lot of that with UCLA, with Stanford, with Utah. So we're prepared for that, but they run some sets pretty well, like some misdirection. So we'll pick two things from them that we really want to work on too. But that's just a really hard trip. So do not take it lightly. It's not easy to play. It's always Washington State's always really, really hard. Washington's hard too, but it's just the travel, I think. And normally it's more challenging also when we're not chartering, because that trip is like a 9-hour trip. But so we're chartering, it makes things easier, but definitely a game that we have to play well. We have to play well on the road to win that game. But I like the way that we played against Cal. I like the way that our offense flowed. I like the way we played together. So if we continue to do that, we'll be able to win a lot of games on the road.
Ryan?
Earlier this, I guess that'd be considered the fall. You said you wanted to add another player to the 2021 class, or at least you were hoping to. Is that still your plan? I know it's kind of tricky because you have, some of your seniors can come back next season.
Yeah, that's what's made it more tricky. I'd say before that, definitely for sure. Now, there's one or two scenarios I'm looking at for a transfer, a really good transfer that I like. But if I didn't get her, probably not, because I think we'll have the option of some people returning. So it just changes recruiting a lot, because this year basically doesn't count. So it's funny how we're thinking about that, and then we're already signing 22s or getting 22 commitments. So it's funny how you have to remember when you're in recruiting and you're getting commitments. Like we just got a commitment a couple of days ago. That player isn't coming for 2 years. So it's like we're preparing for next year, and you're thinking, and sometimes you don't want to talk to players about like who's for sure coming back. So there's so many scenarios and so many different situations with scholarships. So you don't want to talk to your players yet about next year, but then some players could come back, but then you're trying to recruit for like the next class. So it's interesting. It's so different, but at least it's great options.
I mean, I know you can't talk specifically about the 22 commitment, but is it kind of like interesting that, you're getting commitments from players that haven't been able to take an official visit, like they're literally not allowed to visit, and you haven't probably seen them in person. And I don't know if you've ever seen that specific girl in person, but like,
Yeah,
what's that dynamic kind of like?
Well, so most of us, we've seen these kids, but we haven't seen them now in like a year and a half, because with this younger class, you figure, so the class ahead of them, the 21s, last year before COVID, we were watching. So some of these younger kids that were kind of like in the B, they were obviously in the B position because you're trying to finish off 21. It's just a priority as far as necessity. So the younger kids you would have seen all summer this year and this fall. So it's hard. It's a lot of those kids we haven't seen in a while. So it just makes it more challenging. I think that it means you're doing a really good job when you can get someone from across the country to come that's never been to the state of Arizona and not really the West Coast a whole lot. So I think that's impressive. But I think it's also hard for players, because the players are having to make decisions sight unseen, haven't met the team. And I think those are very hard. And we're talking about 16-year-olds. So I think it's challenging for recruiting. A lot more players are staying regionally. And that's to be expected, because we're dead until April at least. So even if you want a 22 to, like, a lot of 22s want to get their recruiting done, because right now they're getting calls every day. When they're top kids, if they don't have a top 10 list, they're getting probably hundreds of calls per week. So like in a way they want to speed up their process, but when they've never been to your state, it's kind of made us have to wait for some prospects probably for another 4 or 5 months to finish the 22 class, just because of that. So it makes recruiting more challenging. The process is a lot longer right now. And I think that I said it before, for the 21-22 class, I think there's going to be a fallout in a couple of years of a tremendous amount of transfers, like way more than now because of this situation.
And you're talking about the 2022s. You've been listed in a lot of, you're like finalists for a lot of those recruits. So I'm just curious, like what your early outlook is on that class, and what you kind of think your class will look like when it's all said and done.
It's going to be a very strong class. We could sign 4 more in that class. So we're losing a lot that year. So we need to fill some big shoes. But I mean, getting the player we got fills some really big shoes, and she's going to be a really good player. So now it's hopefully the avalanche starts and we get to get some of her teammates. I know a couple of the players in 22, they are going to wait some time because they want to take visits. So that's already April, May. So that's the unfortunate part of it. But I guess the fortunate part is we have time for relationships and a lot more Zoom calls to get to know people, which is great. But I don't see our class. I would say before the visits start, I would say maybe we'll have 1 or 2 more visits, and then we'll probably have 2 commitments after visits, I think.
The last question I have is just the Pac-12 announced that fans wouldn't be allowed until I think it was through December 31st. Now that date's passed, I mean, what's kind of the status of that? Is it month by month, week by week? Is it up to the schools at this point, or still the conference has that policy?
No, I think it's up to the schools at this point, because I know the ASU is allowing family and friends, but they were the only one in the conference that was doing so. And they're on pause because of COVID right now. So I think that's not a decision that we're going to make, because I think it's very difficult to allow that given the situation in our state. So I think it's very difficult to say, oh, come to a sporting event, stay distance, and we're the worst we've been since COVID started. I think that's kind of contradictory. So I don't see our school. I think we have very smart administration, and I think they always do the right thing, and we've been very good with COVID and handling it. So I don't think that's happening here. I'd say for at least the next month, because you're seeing the fallout. I mean, a lot of teams in the Pac-12 decided to let their kids go home for Christmas. And for us, we didn't make that decision because we didn't feel that it was the smartest thing to do in a pandemic, to let our kids travel home, be with their family, travel back, and then play basketball. So we didn't do that. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're in a good situation. Now, if you look around the conference, I think you'll see this week a lot of people on pause. I think it's fallout from that. So, I think we made the right decision. I think you're going to see this week a lot of games canceled.
Any other questions for Coach? All right, thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, you guys. I appreciate it.
You're still on mute.
Oh, sorry. I'm good. How are you?
Good. All right, everybody. Well, we got Lauren Ware here. We'll use the raise hand function again, so let's get it going. Ryan?
So what have you learned about yourself through these first however many games so far?
I've learned a lot about myself. I think every day, like every game that we have, I learn something different, whether that be just by watching film or just my coaches talk to me about the game. But the coaches do a really good job of focusing on the things that I need to work on in games and translating that into practice and letting me improve on those things. So, yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think you've improved on the most since the start of the season?
I would say definitely like finishing around the rim, just like having patience and balance in the paint and stuff like that. And then also just post defense is something I'm still working on. But I think I've improved with that and just being able to defend farther out on the post. So.
And how are you feeling physically? I mean, since this is your first season back from an ACL tear.
Yeah, I'm feeling really good. I've been going into like rehab and stuff like that and just getting treatment done. So that's obviously been a big help, but I'm feeling good.
Roy?
Where would you say the team is after last week? You guys lose blowout loss to Stanford, and then you come back and blow out Cal. Where do you think the team is? How was that first practice this week after last week's split?
Yeah, I think just after that game, I think we tried to just focus on us a lot more. Obviously, we have a lot of games coming up, but I think just in practice, focusing on us a lot was important for us. Our offense and our defense, just trying to mesh well with each other and get some of that unity back together on the court. So I think we definitely bounced back from that game, just obviously with Cal and stuff like that. But I mean, we still need to improve every day. So we're just kind of focusing on ourselves right now.
PJ?
Hi, Lauren. You've played nearly a full slate of Pac-12 games. You've got 4 teams yet that you haven't played, but it's the majority of the Pac-12. So far, what's it been like? What do you think of the Pac-12? And is it, before when you were thinking about playing in the Pac-12, is this what you thought it would be?
Yeah, for sure. I think, just my opinion, the Pac-12 is the best conference in the country. I mean, every game that we play is a tough one. There's not like any team that's on any given night, any team can come in. They're going to give us our best shot. So I think just playing in a conference like this has really made me a better player, and just also just the competition that we play every night is amazing. So it's definitely a good conference to be in for sure.
And for you, again, you haven't played basketball in a while, and you come in here and you don't have your normal slate of non-conference games. You only played 2. You had to jump right into the toughest league probably in the nation. How do you think that you're doing so far?
I think I'm doing pretty good. I mean, obviously it was definitely a big adjustment just coming in and not having those conference games, I think was kind of rough. But I mean, just going in, I think the coaches really prepared me really well for the style of play that I'd be going up against coming in as a freshman. I mean, obviously it's a big jump. But I think I've been doing pretty good, and the coaches have helped me out a lot. So.
And what are a couple things that you've realized either yourself or from coaches that you're like, okay, now these are 2 things that, because you always try to break it down, right, to just a couple things. These are 2 things that I need to improve on and that I'm going to be working on. What are your things that you really think that you're focused on right now?
Definitely just finishing with my left hand and being able to go both ways, I think is something I've been working on a lot, and the coaches have emphasized on me. And then also just balance, like I mentioned before, I'm still working on that a lot because that's going to help me with my finishes and stuff like that. And then post defense as well, like rebounding and boxing out and stuff like that is something that our whole team really needs to work on. But just me, myself, I'm working on that a lot. So.
Okay. And your favorite moment so far on the court?
I'd have to say the ASU game was probably like my favorite game that we've played so far, just because obviously it was a big rival and we played a really good game. But I don't have like a specific moment, but I'd say like that game was for sure my favorite. We just had a lot of really good energy and everyone was playing really well together. So that was super fun.
Great. And when in the past, when your team has gone on the road, they always have like a game. Like one year it was Uno. Everybody got in on the Uno game. And the last couple of years, I think there's some murder game they play. But now with all the protocols, what do you guys do? Do you do any type of games or anything on the road?
No, not really. It's definitely been kind of tough just because of the protocol. Like we have to kind of stick with our group, like our roommates and stuff like that. So it's kind of hard to like do those things, which sucks. But I mean, just going on the road, I think obviously we eat meals together and stuff like that, which is nice. So that's kind of when we get all of our like talking and kind of hanging out with the team as a whole. So we haven't played any games yet or anything like that, but obviously it's just tough with the protocol. So yeah.
Okay, one last one. So in your downtime, when you're not studying for school or putting in practice or extra practice, what are your how do you spend that time? Are you a big video game player? Are you a big reader? Are you binge watching something on TV?
Yeah, I'm definitely binge watching something on Netflix or just hanging out with my roommates. Yeah, definitely Netflix for sure, though. I kind of just like to relax on those days that I have off. So that's what I usually do.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Ryan?
Yeah. So volleyball started practice this week. I'm just curious if you've kind of like popped your head in there and seen and watched what's going on, and just now what you kind of think about your decision to play basketball this season.
Yeah. So yeah, they got back this week. So it's definitely cool seeing them back in the gym, and they play really soon actually. So they're definitely working hard, and they've been doing 2-a-days. So I know they're trying to get back on track with their game coming up. But yesterday, actually, they were in RJ where we got done with practice. So I went in and I peeked through the door and just kind of see what they were doing. But I have a lot of good friends on the team, so they kind of told me how it was. I called them yesterday night, just asked them how practice had went, and they're doing really good. So I'm excited for their season. So.
Yeah, what's that kind of like? I mean, you're obviously a part of that team, but you're not really a part of it this season.
Yeah.
I mean, like, what is that feeling like, and what kind of things do you do to kind of stay in touch with your teammates and also the coaching staff?
Yeah, it's definitely tough just not being able to like be there, but just knowing that I'm still on the team, just like Dave and Rita, they text me like every day after the games and stuff like that, just tell me congratulations, good job, or whatever it is. So I talk to them a lot. And then just teammates, like we're all really close, and I have a lot of really close friends on the team. So we talk basically every day. So it's not really much different. It's just the fact that I'm not in practice with them, but I still talk to them pretty much every day.
So I just looked it up and it's 32 degrees in Bismarck right now. I'm just curious what you think about just what the adjustment's been like living in Tucson and where it's like 70 degrees.
Yes, it's definitely different. I was gonna say like they're getting snow now. It's really crazy. I think Christmas was the toughest part for me just because there was no snow. I was like, I can't even imagine Christmas without snow on the ground. So it was definitely a little weird, but I'm happy with the weather we have now. I'd rather be in this weather than 32 degrees. So
Any other questions for Lauren? Yep, go ahead, PJ.
Yeah, on that, when this is all over, what's like the one thing or two things that you really want to do? And when I say this, I mean the pandemic stuff, right?
yeah.
So what are the things that like you just can't wait to do? Is it like playing with your dogs?
Yeah, definitely seeing my dogs. That was something I miss my dogs so much. That would probably be one thing, just like going home and getting to see my family and my dogs and just my friends from back home. That's something I'm really excited to do because it's definitely weird. Like coming in as a freshman, it's just like you don't go seeing your friends without like 2 days. And now I've been like 6 months without seeing my friends and my family. So yeah, it's definitely that's something I would really like to do when I get done with this. So
Okay, thanks.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Lauren.
yes, thank you guys so much.
All right, thanks, everybody.